Hey everyone, this is Chris here. Welcome to your next Syncretism Virtual Academy class. I'll be trying to help you understand the different layers of the spiritual emanation and how the spirit descended from the unlimited causal conscious plane and became conditioned by these separate manifestations of that causal plane, what we term as Jacob's ladder, because we know that the soul descended from the causal plane of unlimited nature. So there, we didn't have form. We had multiple forms. We had an individuality, but we didn't have a set form. We were unlimited. So when we descended into the emanation of the astral plane, this is where we became designed particularly. We got all our particularities, our ideals, forms, and our astral emotions, preferences, things that we feel that are like a psychic in nature, invisible. Some would term it the emotional realm, but the emotional realm is also deeply connected with the physical realm. So these would be superior forms, designs. It would be felt in the sense that instead of like emotions, it'd be more the realm of ideals. So everything is carrying out a particular ideal. This is where a lot of the beautiful stories that we are perceiving, like the mysteries of Santa Claus and the story of these different hero archetypes and different scriptures and ancient texts, they all have an existence in the astral design realm of ideals and forms. And those ideals and forms take on more of a dense form and are perceived as we descend even lower into the impersonal realm of the gaseous force. This is what Thomas H. Burgoyne says would be the third emanation of the spirit as it descends from the spiritual causal realm, the word, angelic, personal, into the astral realm of designs, ideals, and forms, finally crystallizing into the gaseous force realm of the impersonal nature, which is the impersonal emanation of the elements. So we have fire, water, liquid, gas. This is where we start taking on a physical essence. We go through a brief consciousness goes through a brief dreamlike state in the world of matter by protruding through the mineral kingdom, which is like a dreamless state, plant life, which is like a casual dream state, and finally animal, which is the first expression of consciousness. That on the material plane, that would be the first material consciousness that manifests, that has the ability to access what we term consciousness. After being unlimited and descending into the astral gaseous, finally descending into the material realm in the sense of mineral, plant, animal, and descending upward before even becoming a human, we acquire that what we would call the dreamless state, dream state, finally the animal state or our consciousness, until we become what he termed the glory, the culmination, human. Because man is the measure of the universe. We are a minute reflection of the monad that descends from the spiritual realm, which is what we would term a perfect realm. All of this ancient scriptures term it in different ways. You have Christians, the kingdom of heaven, seventh heaven, term it from the Eastern perspective, where Krishna and Radha reside, the divine monad that are forever. A monad is like it's masculine, feminine, Krishna and Radha, right brain, left brain in the human body. So as the soul descends to know itself, it ascends by one law of internal progression. Thomas H. Burgoyne in Light of Egypt brings up Volume 1. Thomas H. Burgoyne, Light of Egypt, Volume 1. He brings up the fact of eternal progression, and that the souls that descends from the monad splits into Adam and Eve. So the mysteries of Adam and Eve. So we need to definitely go into the first emanation. When we descend from the spiritual realm, there's a split. We start to descend and become our masculine, feminine counterpart. Boom. So you're masculine, and then let's say you're a boy, so I'm a boy. So my soul part is the part that manifested that part as a boy, and the other side manifested that part as a girl. Would be the other part of the soul that descended from here and split. But as they split, they need to rejoin in order to ascend back up through these kingdoms appropriately, holistically. So the creators definitely created like a beautiful game structure to allow us to become whole within ourselves. Essentially, Earth is the mid-garden where this journey takes place. As the monad descends, splits into the one becomes the two. Two manifest here as humans in the mid-garden to work on our heart chakra, which is the mid part of our Taurus field. So we descend into the Taurus field, become humans, which are also Taurus fields, and we work on our hearts. The animal conscious chakra levels can only work up to the solar plexus. So we have the ability as humans now to activate our hearts, our throats, our pineal glands, and the top of our head, the crown chakra. When we descend into the Taurus field, it's cool to look at it like this. These spring and summer signs, life, spirit, death, matter, incarnating into the physical realm. So this is before we incarnate. We actually have a life before we're here, and we descend, just like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, me and all these kings, all of these people, there's never been a time where we haven't been. We've always been, but now we're self-actualizing in the material realm with a design, ideal form, gaseous, with this gaseous form to become a dense physical body, to become entombed in the realm of matter so that we can have a unique individuality to return to the spiritual realm, oneness with difference. So we transverse up through ascending inside of our body. Our body is what we'd call the tomb, but the tomb is what we use to ascend back up to these. So we have to, once we become a human, we actually are able to help animals, help plants. We help grow plants. We look after minerals, animals, plants. We understand the forces of the gases, the forces of the impersonal nature of Krishna or the Supreme Christos or Christ. And we understand the astral plane. When we start investigating ourselves when we're asleep, and also being asleep, understanding the allegory of being asleep even when we're awake, like right now in this physical realm, it's considered allegorically we're asleep. So when we are investigating the astral plane, we have to investigate it when we're awake and when we're asleep. And we're definitely going to be going in to ways to help us explore that part. Okay, there's a couple of quotes I want to read. One from Alvin Boyd Kuhn. I recommend everyone read The Lost Key to the Scriptures by Alvin Boyd Kuhn. And all this is extremely pertinent to the present essay because the word death is the key word of focal import that carries the whole biblical reference to the involutionary side of the theological construct. This death is precisely what the divine soul suffers upon and through its descent into the human body. It is the comprehensive word used to cover the whole range of the soul's loss of its divine nature. So he's explaining how death is human incarnation and we lose our unlimited nature from the spiritual causal plane. But a part of us does exist there. That part is imperishable, unmanifest, and it's what Krishna speaks of in the Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Self. It is the comprehensive word used to cover the whole range of the soul's loss of its divine nature, or being, as it plunges downward on the Jacob's ladder between heaven and earth. It is the Bible's testimony and confirmation of the lost doctrine of involution as both a dialectically and a factually necessary predicate of evolution. If any of the hundreds of students of Greek, Chaldean, and Oriental religions who have been conversant with the characterizations of the soul's life in the body as its death has ever caught the idea that possibly the conception could or should be applied to the elucidation of the Christian biblical material, the inklings has never got beyond the recesses of private thought. If at any time the idea generated a hint in this direction, the movement of suggestion that might have gone on to monotonous discovery has been discouraged, deterred, and thwarted by the instinctive perception of the absolutely shattering and submersive implications which the doctrine held for traditional Christian theology. For the full reach of these involvements embraced the necessary transferal of the death of the Son of God from a physical and historical basis and reference to a majestic symbolic depiction of a purely spiritual or anthropological transaction, and that not in the case of one man, but of all men. Through death to life. Hercules, the first philosopher generally mentioned in histories of philosophy, gives expression to the conception, which is quite basic for the intelligent approach to this ancient view of the soul's life and body. He speaks of the several elements formed by the gradations of atomic composition of matter at different levels and says that a lower one lives the death of a higher one, as a higher one dies under the life of a lower one. Water lives the death of air. So, for example, he's saying that water lives because air dies. Air is crucified and dies for water to live. Water lives the death of air, he says, as air lives the death of fire. This is to say that the seed of a higher life must give its vital essence over to a sort of static death. Static death. When it projects its energies outward and downward and incorporates them in organisms existing on the plane below its own status, thus to become the inspiring and souling life-giving principle in those organisms. Hence, the sun dies and that soul spirit, the invisible sun, sheds its inner essence for the lower organisms or the material dwellers to have our existence and being. So it's really deep stuff. It's beautiful. It's poetic. It's anagogical. It's our ability to use our right hemisphere of our brain to be like children and activate what we talked about in our last lesson, how George W. Carey said we have to become like children and know that Santa Claus is real. The Santa Claus exists within our hearts on an everyday level. And there'll never be a time where it won't exist because it's instilled and stamped in creation forever from the realm of ideals. It's close to the angelic world, and that's why it's kind of invisible, you know? Now, I'd like to touch on Hermetic Masonry by Frank C. Higgins. This guy, it's a beautiful book where he decodes all the mysteries pertaining to the ancient craft where before it got corrupted, it was once beautiful. Man is on this chapter is called the 12 Fellow Crafts. Man is unable to comprehend eternity in any other sense than that of a circle. The greater God of all the old pantheons always represented time, and he was the father of all other gods. He carried in his hand a straight line and a circle. The first had beginning and end, the second neither. This represented time and eternity. The straight line divided into 12 equal parts also represented matter. From it was constructed the great cosmic triangles of 3, 4, and 5 parts, the foundation of all geometrical science. The solar universe constituting a stupendous clock keeping more perfect time, and the divinely adjusted revolutions of all its parts than the most perfect chronometer of human workmanship, naturally conveys the notion of periodic time and also furnishes the means for its measurement in the circular courses of the planets around the great dial of the ecliptic. The almost circular but still ecliptic course, this is back when they didn't understand that the Earth was flat. Of course, the Earth around the sun, what it means to say, actually, he got it right the first time when he said the planets revolving around the ecliptic. So essentially, see, logically, we know that the Earth is a plane, that we live on a plane of inertia. The division of this year circle into 12 equal parts is one of the pillars of geometry, as its further section into 360 is in mathematics. Neither is an arbitrary process, but each is founded on fixed natural principles. The allegory of King Solomon's temple, so closely parallel upon real historical happenings to a material edifice, was that of the fruitful year, with its bountiful harvest and various other blessings, scarcely erected and dedicated ere falling into destruction and decay. The story of the annual building of the temple, its destruction and restoration in 3 days, the untimely loss of its chief architect, and of its miraculous revival for the purpose of continuing his labors, is a theme of legends as old as the pyramids, if not older, and has been told in many different ways to various different races and ages. So essentially what he's trying to explain is that this is what the story is trying to, this is the story that's been passed down from the ecliptic, and we're taught this through stories like King Solomon or King Arthur and the knights of the 12 around King Arthur and the knights table. We have this stamped in our spiritual DNA, and this sine wave is the secret to understanding why things happen the way they do, where we are now and where we're going, and who we are as opposed to who we are not. So I put together a small thing I need to do screen share to show. And let's get into this. Let's see. So that sine wave is the eternal cycle that we descend into. And this eternal cycle is a cycle of souls being created in the causal plane, descending into physical incarnation through involution, and evolving out with consciousness and cognizance back to the causal plane, becoming unconditioned and returning back to our homes. And in the process, this realm here, the physical plane of inertia, becomes perfected and slowly becomes spiritualized to the point where this realm, this physical realm, will merge with the spiritual heaven realm, and we'll take this realm up to the 7th dimension at one point. But that's when we apply out, it happens in a natural course of time, because this physical realm is a astral. It's actually a crystallization or a dense form of the astral plane. So everything here in this physical realm can be found in the astral plane. So eternal cycles. So we talked about the spiritual realm, and the best ways to correlate to the spiritual realm is understanding that this realm is what gives birth to the first emanation, or the first utterance, or the first movement, which is the word, the logos, coming from the unlimited or causal plane, whereas we are in the realm of effects, redshift, blue shift. So under the spiritual realm, we have the astral realm, which is the realm of ideas and forms. This is where archetypes and various different behavior patterns and longings and comprehensive ideas and forms take place. This is where the unlimited becomes a bit more limited, more crystallized into more forms that are more fixed. And finally, the impersonal force realm, which is the gaseous realm, which takes place in form, gives birth to the mineral world of phenomenon, which is the cube, matter, or in the tomb where we're deposited. Plant realm life facilitates the consciousness in the dream realm. It gives birth to that, as well as the animal realm of consciousness is where animals exist in the physical realm, which gives birth to our ability to have consciousness, access to the consciousness here in this physical realm. So they're like the bridge well, almost, I'd say humans are more of the bridge, but they're a portal for spiritual, invisible forces and beings to incarnate into the physical realm and go through their cycle of necessity. So finally, we come to the human realm of mind, where we have access of mind, self-reflection, our ability now to self-reflect and analyze our thoughts, behaviors, and become self-individualized as we have separated from, well, not separated, but we become dense. We become the counterpart of the spiritual causal realm and have descended to the physical realm to experience this workshop. And we as humans have a really big responsibility because we're the culminating point. So it says involution and evolution, internal progression. Sorry, the thing's in the way of the title. I apologize. The soul involves itself in matter and begins its ascent up Jacob's ladder in the same way the spinal fluid rises up the spinal column. So as you attend this academy, you'll hear what we term the sacred secretion, or the fluid that descends from the cerebrum down into the sacrum and makes its annual journey back up into the pineal gland, resurrecting the dead brain cells and incarnating more of this material force into material form and becoming spiritualized here. We'll notice the similarities between the outer happening of the soul actually descending into human form and how this fluid descends from the cerebrum, causal plane, becomes differentiated in the pineal and pituitary gland, and it descends and separates down into the sacrum. And through right living and living in accordance with natural law, it rises back up and unites and becomes unified again. Well, that's very similar to how the soul descends into matter, goes through its alchemical transformation, and reascends. So on the left, we have a picture here. We see the material man on the lower part of the picture, and the crucified spirit, which is the transcendental, not the fleshly vessel, but the spiritual man within, which is immortal. It's the higher self, the higher guidance. Krishna, Christ, Buddha, God's emanations, God's avatars, God's messengers. It's the Christ that descends from the highest spiritual realm and manifests in various different ways throughout its descent. One way, as we would refer to it, being crucified into matter, giving birth to us, an actual physical organism. By recognizing the defects of the material realm, how it's a shadow, and how there's a lot of very, very cruel, evil things that can take place in this realm that are not right. We learn that it's very, very possible that the soul descends in a way that is of its own accord, and it decided to descend. And if it decided to descend, it has to face the repercussions of that descent. So when you decide to say, hey, F it, I'm just going to descend and commit harm to myself or others, or then essentially you're deciding to descend, and it's going to hurt. It's going to cause pain and suffering and attachment. So here in this material realm, unlike the spiritual realm, we can experience these negative qualities. So by recognizing the defects of ourselves and not identifying with the body, we can transcend the five senses and begin the resurrection process, which is an internal alchemical process that's brought about through self-remembering, abiding in the essence, practicing the path of alchemy and transmutation of the soul. By living the example that Jesus and Krishna and the other incarnations of the highest truth of God set out as an example for us to live, so that we can crucify our five senses and give birth to the spiritual man within and ascend up Jacob's ladder. this brings our attention back to the sine wave. Our home in the spiritual realm, I like to see it as, in the spiritual realm, on the sine wave, we can see it as the summer and spring signs of the zodiac. So we have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Summer and spring being the spiritual realm. When our soul descends from the monad and separates into male and female counterparts, it bites the apple and falls into the tomb of matter, or the underworld. And this is the physical realm. And then we have our resurrection in spring, which is, we experience spring every year. But after our life of the death of winter, we also experience the spring of resurrection. We also have a spiritual high point in Leo. And we have there's judgment, of course, from the ancient Egyptians. The scales of Libra judge our heart, weighed against a feather. This all has a direct impact to our actions now are going to impact our reality later. And it's beautiful to know that, the physical realm is the death of the soul. And yes, we can see, you can become more numb here. You can become more and more in tuned in matter. We'll get to that. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I apologize. The spiritual realm is seen in the summer and spring signs of the sine wave, while physical realm, or the underworld, is reflected by the fall and winter signs of the zodiac. The soul dies when it falls into physical incarnation. God said, if you eat of the apple, you will die. He was referring to our fall into physical incarnation. Now, the soul can become more hardened and attuned in matter and experience various levels of forgetfulness. This is why it's good to practice meditation, prayer, yoga, chanting, physical exercise, working with your material elements. By working with your body, you're awakening your mind. By awakening your mind, you're giving health to your body and soul. So this is how we wake up from being forgetful, from paying attention to ourselves moment from moment. Every day through these practices, we can activate our cognitions and pay attention to everything around us, observing all aspects of ourself, our life, our psyche, and putting forth genuine effort to make changes where there is darkness and ignorance. This is the key to achieving an inner summer or spring. So here in the physical realm, we also experience the beautiful spring and blossoms of spring and summer. If once we raise our energies up and experience the baptism from earth into water, from air into fire, we ascend and experience a summer and spring here now. Just in the same way it comes around on summer and spring, we can experience that. Even in wintertime, we can activate our summer and spring. As opposed to the dark night of the soul, which would be the winter and fall signs of the zodiac. Fall would be close to like the temptation that is symbolic of the temptation that leads us to that dark depressive state. And then this challenge will give fertile ground for resurrection or self-renewal in spring. So the sine wave turns back on itself here and starts again at Aries. Again, resurrection. So as you can see, this is the will of God, the Dharma will, the rotor will. And essentially this is depicting folded back into itself. It makes the circle of the zodiac, and in the middle we have Adam Kadmon, which is the microcosmic man, or as we said, the human, the culmination point. We are the below physical aspect, and he is the 12 zodiac above in the eclectic. So on the head here, see that Aries is spring. The day it starts would be 6 a.m. Aries correlates to the rooster because the rooster crows at 6 a.m. The rooster is a potent energy sign. The body starts at Aries, the head, the man that was laying down, who is the blueprint of the heavens. The head rules over Aries. So 6 a.m., Aries, the head, rules over our cerebrum. The sacred year starts in Aries, whereas the secular year starts in Capricorn. We make our physical goals of improvement in our physical realm in Capricorn, and we make our idealistic, invisible spiritual aspirations in spring. We always want to renew, to change our bad habits. It's the best time to start our spiritual aspirations and goals during the sacred new year, and our physical aspirations in the Capricorn, January, secular first of the year. So as we know, Aries being the head, and on the ecliptic 6 a.m., Aries also is that energy that always goes first. Wherever they go, they're always first, and they go where angels fear to tread. So it's a courageous sign. So at 6 a.m., we can utilize this courageous energy to get up and activate our internal spiritual atoms, and to, just like the rooster crows at 6 a.m., when it gets that energy, that electrical surge that emanates when the sun rises, it rises with a bang. That's Aries, 6 a.m. Soul cycles. The sun goes through a cycle in which it is born, matures, reaches its highest point, begins declination, becomes dead in the winter, and resurrects in spring. The sun is the macro soul of man, and the journey of the sun is really the interior journey of birth, death, and sacrifice, and finally resurrection of the soul in regards to being entangled in the tomb of matter. This is the esoteric wisdom of the ages. In the same way we see, as we live, we look around and we see the trees that once were lush and green in the summer become dead in the winter. For the first time, one may think that the trees are forever going to be withered and dead, but it is only until we witness the resurrection firsthand that we begin to understand the cycles of nature. By observing intuitively the cycle of the sun and how it impacts nature and renews it cyclically, and by observing this intuitively, we can come to a space of calm in knowing that in order to have that, in the same way those trees are renewed after the fall and winter, and in the spring they blossom with flowers once again, in the same way the soul that's entombed in matter in the underworld of winter will resurrect and have its spring, its summer in the spiritual realm. That's how we triumph. That's how the hero conquers darkness. Because the matter and all the dead plants, dead things are renewed by the sun. When you solar gaze, or when you raise the chrism, which is from the solar plexus, that solar energy reaches the Lamb of God and reactivates the talents and dead brain cells that were once latent or dead in winter. It renews them and brings back life to them, as the ability to rise the dead, just as we see in the past times of the God incarnate Christ, the stories of the transcendental pastimes of that emanation of the supreme realm, and which we would refer to as the inner sun, or the spiritual sun, which is the symbol of the great spirit in us, which helps us resurrect from our inner winter. So as we can see, how do we experience these season changes within our own self? Well, as you can see, the pineal gland, Joseph, secretes the milk. Pituitary Mary secretes the honey, both from the same source. So like we talked about here, how the monad descends from the spiritual realm and splits into the dyad, Adam and Eve. So too, the oil descends from the top of the brain, the cerebrum, the most high, and differentiates itself in the two laboratories, the pineal and pituitary gland, and make its way down into physical incarnation or the sacral. Are you starting to see how this inner happening, the outer seasons, as well as the soul's descent into matter, are all intricately connected? They are all one. Just like Santos says, all is attuned, all is atom. The sacred oil returns after crossing the crucifixion, enters the cerebellum. Golgotha, the place of the soul where the crucifixion takes place. Christ is refined 1,000-fold and is resurrected, and spring comes to the body. Your blood is completely renewed and replenished. Your insights are renewed. Your connections with the Creator is renewed. Your ability to comprehend things are finally just how they were when you were a child. Your inner excitement comes back. You can experience the honeymoon phase as the pituitary gland Mary secretes the honey in the brain. You can experience the honeymoon phase by retaining your energy and living in accordance with natural law. The two sacred oils travel down into the solar plexus via the semilunar ganglion, which is the pneumogastric nerve. The psychophysical germ is the fruit of the tree of life, and it is born in the solar plexus or the manger. The Eta, the red, and the Pingala, the blue, two nerve fluids, or at the crossing of the medulla oblongata, the crucifixion takes place, where it rests for 2.5 days before it comes out of the tomb or the fornix, which is a space within the head, touches the optic thalamus, and activates the lamp. So this is how we raise our lamps. This is how we experience an inner spring or an inner summer, and we're able to overcome the dark night of the soul and all of the trauma that we've experienced being encased in matter. So the sine wave creates the drama of the hero's journey. Our lives are dramas. We read dramas. Everything is a drama. Life is a dramatic, beautiful catastrophe, essentially. It's a drama. The drama of our lives are dramas. Drama is Rama, and Rama is the Ram. And Rama in Sanskrit means a person with purity of mind, embodiment of Dharma, and attracts all with his divine appearance and qualities. Rama is the name of one of the avatars of Vishnu, which is the Christ or the Christos or the first emanation of the spiritual realm. Rama is Aries, the Lamb of God. Rama, or the cerebrum, the cerebrum. Our cerebrum, which is ruled by Aries, remember we said 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. Aries, the head is a cerebrum. That ram is our inner Moses. Moses blows the ram's horn and says, stop worshiping the golden calf. He's talking about moving from the Taurus lower brain, which rules the cerebellum, into the age of Aries, or the ram, the cerebrum. This takes place naturally and cyclically. As we know, we've moved from the age of Taurus into the age of Aries. That's what that story symbolized. So it's not only just like a historical or astrological happening, it happens within us on a day-to-day basis. And we can activate our cerebrum through mastering our 4 seasons and elements. This is where spring resides in man's temple. This is where we need to begin the construction of Solomon's temple with the help of Hiram-Abiff, which is an ancient story passed along through from the ancient stories of King Solomon, which is the Temple of Solomon, which is the temple of sun and moon, which is the left brain and right hemispheres of the brain. Hence, we are the Temple of Solomon. We talked about our last lesson with the Cain method of meditation, being shepherds of our energy, shepherding our sheep and our bulls with the staff. We talked about how we can bring the energy up from the lower mind. Mona Lisa smile, which means slightly smiling, which opens up the gate of heaven within the cranium. Golgotha is the place of the skull, the crucifixion. So, as follows: breathe up, feel the energy behind you moving up the spine, up to the back of the head and around. Fix your gaze slightly to your horizon. Mona Lisa smile, opening the inner gates channel. Now, if you reside here in the cerebrum, by fixing your gaze at the horizon, it'll activate the neocortex. The neocortex is the higher mind, and the high allows you to have functionality and control and dominate the cerebellum so that you can be a good cow herder like Krishna and activate your sheep and be a shepherd herder like Yeshua. So that's how you activate your cerebrum. And of course, transmuting the sexual energy by abstaining from releasing your sexual energy, from rising it up the spinal canal, vertebrae by vertebrae, up the shepherd's staff and around. Cool down. We are in the mid garden, so we are eternally progressing from here, but we're like man and beast. We have divine angelic qualities from the spirit realm, and we have bestial animal qualities. So our goal is just to subliminate these instinctual animal qualities into their higher counterpart, not through forced celibacy, not through forcing ourselves through any dogma, but by comprehending ourselves intelligently and understanding how the sine wave impacts our lives and how to live in natural alignment with the seasons. So as we can see, we're the tree of life here placed over the human body. We can see Malkuth by the knees of the human body, close to the genital region. That is the physical realm. That's found. That is the physical incarnation where the soul descends from the top of the head, acquires these 7 virtues from the top 3 Sephiroth, which is love, wisdom, and truth. Emanate the 7, and the soul descends and appears in Malkuth and makes its journey back up. So this is by doing this process, just like a flower blooms from a seed and starts sprouting and blossoms, that sap within the flower. Finally, when that flower blossoms, the flower blooms and it's beautifully perfect and gives off a fragrance. In the same way, our bodies, if we don't interfere with them, have a similar process that takes place. From the dead of winter of the root chakra, we rise our chrism up the spinal canal into the springtime and activate the right hemisphere of the brain, where Jesus says he'll sit at the right hand of the Father. Essentially, this is talking about activating that right hemisphere of the brain through practicing correct living. George W. Carey said it's all about not getting in the way of a natural process that occurs naturally. Because we have become so traumatized, ill, and have abused ourselves for so long, we have to do extraneous methods to help recover what has been lost, because we have not been given this knowledge at the appropriate age. I am 24 years old, and I really wish I received this knowledge, at age 12, 13, 14, because, I received this knowledge at age 18, 17 and 18. And by then, I'd already caused a lot of harm to myself. So I'm very grateful for this knowledge, and I hope that I'm able to help you guys on your journey. And I do ask, please leave me feedback. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you, answer any questions. Feel free to comment, leave a message, ask any question. I'll try to help you the best I can. I really would appreciate feedback so I know what I can prepare for you guys if there's any specific needs in any area. So as you can see, the sine wave on the lower right, we have the sine wave and how essentially it is going from, it goes up and down, up and down. So that's the law of rhythm. So we experience this on a day-to-day basis. 6 a.m. sunrise, 12 p.m. the sun's at its highest point, Leo. Boom, so much energy, so much sun, so much aliveness. And finally it sets in Libra, 6 p.m. And we experience that cyclically every day. And then we experience on a year level through summer, spring, winter, fall. And we also experience life in the spiritual realm, death by physical incarnation, our life here. We also experience like a little miniature summer and spring. And, finally we'll see the glorious realms of the ether realm, where we transmute and finally attain to the ether body, where we transmute our earth and water body and finally acquire the fire and air body. We'll definitely be getting into that, how this process is giving birth to more subtle realities of existence beyond here. So the seasons are within. We experience summer, winter, fall, and spring, not only in outer seasons, but as inner alchemical experiences that happen within. So everything is always connected. In the winter months, we're given the light that has been crucified, and our souls are enlightened. Our burdens are less, and we have more spiritual power. In the winter, we experience time of refuge and silence, meditation and contemplation. The summer, however, is full of work and rejoicing, as well as worried about physical aspects of life, appearance, vacations, getting businesses started. Things thrive in summer. However, it is the best time to practice yoga as well, because that's when the spiritual energies are also strong. So in the spring, we have a feeling of inner renewal and rebirth. Hence, the Lamb of God takes away the sins of the world. We see all the birds chirping and the flowers blooming. Beautiful time, a kingdom of heaven, essentially, in a little outer representation. If we used our winter appropriately, saved our seeds, and let our spiritual seeds germinate in that darkness of winter during the time that you experience winter, then you'll have a great spring. Essentially, you'll reap your harvest. You'll reap what you sow. You will receive the rewards and rebirth of inner talents and renewal of ideas and energy and of your blood and of your physicality, depending on what seeds are planted in the wintertime. So how can we use a season like winter to our best advantage? One way is to go with the flow of the sine wave and immerse yourself in winter by meditating in darkness. I recommend meditating in a dark room, listening to classical music such as Mozart, Chopin, some of your favorite meditation music, singing bowls, mantras, kirtans from the Indian tradition. Make sure that you're sleeping in a dark room or you're meditating for an hour a day in utter darkness, because the pineal gland needs a certain amount of darkness to be able to secrete the appropriate fluids, melatonin and DMT, so that you can have visions and insights and epiphanies and communicate with the angelic realms. With meditation, the only way that meditation is going to work and be able to be of value is also if you're retaining the fire. What I mean by retaining the fire is using your sexual energy and your fiery impulses and conserving them, as if winter was cold and you needed to keep the chimney or wood in the chimney. Keep wood in your chimney. Remember, we talked about the allegory of Santa Claus, and we know the spinal column is the chimney. We know where the fire would reside. Keep your chimney stocked, keep the fire burning, and allow it to seep into the heart with the methods that we have gone over. In the wintertime, it's good to really go against the grain of our animal nature and really look at giving up some bad habits. What bad habits are pulling us and creating harm in our life. Winter is the time where we can come face to face with them. Because the sun is crucified and is in less strength, our inner sun is in more strength because it's correlated correspondently. So we have the ability to conquer during this time, to become, crucify our five senses and resurrect the inner master within. We can contemplate, we can do meditation by simply abiding in the essence, separating from thought, and being still for up to 30 minutes. But we can also use contemplative meditation and contemplate on the dead winter and the fall and how it represents the fertile ground for rebirth, how all things grow from the womb and how the womb is the tomb, and the tomb and the womb are darkness, but light is given birth from it. So this is not just for nothing. This is natural. This is a process that is taking place that is allowing us to experience this growth from within. Comprehend that when there is a low and a dark night of the soul, that light and renewal are in the making. That light and renewal are right around the corner. We have to analyze our defects and continue to transmute our animal nature into spring consciousness on a day-to-day basis. After years of work, you start transmuting more and more and incarnating your inner being so that you become less automaton, less automated, less animal, and more human, more man, more woman, more light, less dense. And that happens here and now through practicing what the ancients have laid out through us, through understanding the sine wave and the ecliptic, by aligning our lives to the seasons on a daily and yearly basis. We are able to analyze our defects and continue to transmute our animal nature into spring. Every year, the Great Spirit gives us the same trials and circumstances, continues to pop up. So basically, like the Great Spirit or the Great Mother gives us the same trials and circumstances continually, and they pop up in different ways throughout our life, and they reoccur. These patterns reoccur and continue to torment you on the journey until you are able to overcome them through identifying with the invisible being within, which is the sun, or the inner invisible sun, or the Christ that's crucified. Through that power, through that grace of the Christ that's within your heart, that dwells within you, you are able to conquer over these circumstances and learn the lessons of this material realm. So the invisible sun, which is our soul in the seventh dimension, its highest form, and we are a fractal partial of Krishna, and Krishna is the invisible spiritual sun, and so is Jesus, and so is that is our cause, as we are the many, the partials, and the effect of that. So what can we do with this knowledge? Well, we can utilize our inner sun by being cognizant, by living in the moment, by feeling and remembering who we are and where we come from, and understanding the principle as within, so without. That so as there are seasons in the outer realm, and we see the sun go through different cycles, so inside of us we have different occurrences, different archetypes that appear within us that help move us along on our journey. The difference is that we're conscious of it, right? This happens to everybody, but people can choose how conscious they are of it. The visible sun is only a physical body of the spiritual sun. The spiritual sun is the symbol of the Christ. The Christ is the word that emanates from the causal realm. Our inner sun is the key to achieving the inner summer and conquering over our inner winter, or dark night of the soul. The sun liberates us from matter. In the same way, it vaporizes an ice cube into water, and then into vapor, and then finally into light. The sun is our salve, the invisible. It salves us and brings us upward into the heavens. In life, we live out a rhythm. We have ups and downs. We work hard and see results, only to be defeated. We then build ourselves back up and reach a point higher than what we had attained before. As a great master once said, an ascent is always followed by a descent. A descent is always followed by an ascent. We fall before we rise. When we are down, we're preparing for our highest point of victory. This is the common message in the hero story, because it is the story of the soul and the triumph over circumstances. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope that this can help you acknowledge who you are, where you come from, and where you're going. This world is feeding us nothing but nihilism, that everything happens for absolutely no reason at all, and that we are all here on a spinning ball due to our biological evolution. And the truth of the matter is the ancients taught us that everything comes from the invisible realm, and that this physical realm is an emanation from an invisible cause. So this is what we are trying to help people learn. Like I said, please leave me any feedback or any questions I can help you with. I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys at the next lesson. Thank you so much.